Hello viewers and welcome to an Assassin's Creed Shadows video. Today we're going to dive into what I believe is the best start to finish build for Naoe. This is the early game version of the build and I'll post the end game slash final version sometime next week. And the reason that I'm doing two videos is because most of your time will be spent leveling up, so you won't have access to all the legendary traits and even a lot of the traits that are sold by vendors in late game provinces. I want to show you how to start this build and how good it can be in the early and mid game before showing the end game version, which is completely insane. So let's go ahead and get started. The only piece of equipment that you really need for this build is the Shinobi's Fury Tonto. Actually, you just need the trait, which is weak point attacks make enemies vulnerable a second time. I'm not sure exactly how this made it through playtesting, but yeah, it's very strong. The best part is you can get this Tonto very early on from completing the Golden Teppo main quest, which you can easily do within the first few hours of the game. From here, you can really take anything else you want to equip. However, you want some traits that are going to either increase your critical chance or your damage against vulnerable enemies if you can find those. I got lucky with this piece here. I think it was a random drop. If you don't get lucky like I did, then anything that increases posture attack damage or damage against vulnerable enemies will work. On your chest, I find it beneficial to run the 6% healing on posture attacks. This is going to be the vast majority of what you are doing, and so getting that little bit of healing is going to stack up a lot over time. On your trinket, you want the plus 50% adrenaline from posture attacks, or if you don't have that, just take the flat plus 20% adrenaline gain. I recommend taking either the plus 10% damage per unused ability if you are only using Shadow Piercer. Otherwise, you could go with plus 1% health mastery per point in Shinobi, especially if you're underconfident with defending. As for the secondary weapon, I don't think it really matters. I took Katana, but honestly, I almost never use it, so yeah, just take whatever you want. So as you can see here, I'm just over level 30, but really you could start this build at a low level. As I said earlier, you can get the Shinobi's Fury Tonto very early in the game in the first couple hours, and there's only one mastery that is really needed for the build to function. It's accessible at Knowledge Rank 1. That ability is Shadow Piercer from the Tonto tree, and this is your primary ability and the only one that is absolutely needed. Basically, you throw a knife, then you gap close and make the enemy vulnerable. It deals a little bit of damage. The damage will scale up as you get the passive perks for it, but it also will interrupt most enemy attacks and it will stun them very briefly when you make them vulnerable. Basically, you want to max this whole talent line out. Some other very good abilities that you want to get quickly are Gap Seeker and Backstabber. These are both solid passives. You definitely want these to increase your damage output. Vault, this is really good for two reasons. First of all, it makes your enemy vulnerable and puts you in a position to attack from behind, which is going to trigger a lot of your damage buffs. Secondly, you can vault to interrupt an enemy's chain attack, so it's basically an interrupt, stun, and damage buff all in one, and it costs no adrenaline, which is pretty amazing. Destabilizing Vault basically just builds on that by giving us plus 25% crit chance for 10 seconds after a vault, which is really good on its own. It's even better if you manage to find the plus 30% crit chance against vulnerable enemies, and if you combine these two, you're basically just going to be critting a lot. Backstab is also very good to have. It dramatically increases your damage versus armor. Only take this early if you're good at positioning and can get a reasonable number of posture attacks from behind. Otherwise, you're definitely going to want to get Vault first. Evasive gives us a plus 12% damage after a Vault to go with the plus 25% or plus 55% crit chance. Yeah, I think that's all we need to say about that. Vigor 1. Having an additional adrenaline chunk lets you store adrenaline better, which means a higher chance of opening with Shadow Piercer and getting that whole combo situation rolling. Some abilities that are nice to have, but that you can wait a bit for, are things like Leap Strike, which is good, but it's really low priority unless you're struggling on adrenaline. I don't think you should be. I know I haven't, but if you are, then definitely try to use Leap Strike as your opener out of Shadow Piercer. I also just suck at remembering to use it, so if you have a better memory or more skill than me, this is probably going to be a lot better for you. Vigor 2 and Vigor 3, the first extra chunk of adrenaline really elevates the build. That's why Vigor 1 is in the set of masteries that you want to get early. The third and fourth chunks of adrenaline are just like extra icing on a cake. They're nice to have, but they're not really that necessary. Executioner from the Assassin tree gives us a nice plus 12% damage boost. It's not bad, it's not great, but if you want a damage boost, the extra adrenaline from Assassin Mastery is decent. Some more situational abilities are things like Shadow Barrage. If you are having trouble defending or get into big fights where you're outnumbered and getting attacked a lot, Shadow Barrage can be a great emergency button to hit. It basically will make you invulnerable to most attacks, but you do need to be aware that if you auto dodge from Shadow Barrage, it will interrupt your own attacks, which is kind of annoying since we do have to charge up our posture attacks, and Shadow Barrage will often knock us out of these. Adrenaline generator from the tools tree. This is only really necessary if you're struggling with adrenaline generation. It could be a nice alternative to something like Leap Strike if you struggle to execute that the way I do. This could help to make up the shortfall without having to use an active ability. Melee Expert from the Katana Global passives will up your melee damage a bit. The 9% is less than most other damage buffs, which are usually 12%. However, there's no prerequisite for this, so it is nice to have because it's going to apply 100% of the time, as opposed to only when you meet certain criteria. Frontrunner is very situational from the Assassin tree. Yes, the 12% damage boost is nice, but it's predicated on keeping your health full. This build benefits from this because it's generally hard to hit, but if you are struggling with avoiding damage, then don't bother with this trait. The gameplay for this build is very simple, and that's part of the reason that it's so good. Basically, you try to open a fight by using Shadow Piercer on the strongest enemy. You hit with one light attack and one posture attack for maximum damage, then do the same thing again as Shinobi's Fury procs and makes the target vulnerable for the second time. This is pretty easy to do because the Tanto has a very fast windup for posture attacks. Now, in some cases, you can get 2 light attacks off before the posture attack. However, this depends heavily on your positioning relative to the enemy and is not always guaranteed, so I'm saying 1 light attack here to be safe. If the enemy has a bunch of armor, try to get at least one of your posture attacks from behind for that big armor-piercing buff from backstab. Try to deflect whatever attacks you can, especially the chain and combo attacks. As soon as you deflect, hit Alt or whatever the console button is to vault over the enemy. I often find with vaults that I need to go straight to the posture attack from behind with no light attack. However, that's most likely a skill issue on my part. As soon as Shadow Piercer is ready again, just go ahead and use it. And this is a way that you're going to nuke down a boss or an elite pretty quickly. Or you could use it to effectively gap close onto enemy missile units or the annoying guys that hold up their fan to summon additional enemies. I don't think it's actually a fan, I think it's a paddle, but it looks like a fan to me. Assuming you aren't getting hit too much, you can usually heal yourself pretty effectively just by using posture attacks thanks to that plus 6% healing from your armor. However, if you are much better than me at dodging and deflecting and you don't get hit at all, feel free to swap that trait out with something else that's going to be more damage oriented. So that's pretty much it. This really is one of the best builds for Naoe, and it's great because you could start it at the beginning of the game. You don't need to hunt for a lot of hard to get traits, and you don't need to rush for knowledge ranks. Instead, you can play the game normally or at your own pace while having a very strong build that's really centered on only a couple of abilities. This makes it very easy to learn and easy to play, and it's something that you can grow with throughout the game. It's going to just keep getting stronger and stronger just from playing the game normally. In the late game, the build becomes absolutely insane, making Naoe incredibly tanky via self-heals, while also dishing out huge amounts of damage and having pretty effective crowd control. I'll be posting a shorter, updated build for the endgame next week, so if you're interested in that, stay tuned. If you enjoyed this content, please go ahead and hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons, and as always, take care until the next time.